Welcome to Module 1, Orientation and Publication Awareness. Over the next 20 minutes, our goal is very simple: to remove confusion, build clarity, and help you understand exactly what you are doing and why. By the end of this session, you should not feel overwhelmed. Instead, you should feel clear, confident, and structured in your thinking. At this stage, it is important to establish clear expectations. There are 4 key objectives that guide this process, and understanding them will help you remain focused throughout your research journey. First, you are expected to understand what academic research actually means in practical terms. This involves moving beyond theoretical definitions and recognizing how research operates in real academic contexts. Second, you need to understand publication. Research is not complete until it is shared, and publication ensures that your work contributes to broader academic discussions. Third, you should understand the purpose behind engaging in research. This process develops analytical thinking, structured reasoning, and the ability to work with evidence. Finally, you must be clear about the expected outcome. You are not required to produce highly complex work, but rather structured, original research that demonstrates clarity and understanding. Academic research can be understood through 3 interconnected components: research itself, publication, and the types of publication. These elements together form the core framework of academic work. Research is the foundation. It involves investigating a question, gathering relevant information, and developing insights based on evidence. This stage requires clarity of purpose and structured thinking. Publication follows research. It is the process through which your findings are shared with the academic community. Publication allows your work to be reviewed, discussed, and built upon, making it a critical part of the research cycle. Finally, there are different types of publication. Conference papers are generally shorter and suitable for early-stage research, while journal articles require deeper analysis and undergo more rigorous review. Understanding these components helps you see research as a continuous and structured process rather than an isolated task. Beyond understanding research and publication, it is essential to recognize the elements that guide the research journey: a clear roadmap, ethical standards, and effective personal planning. A roadmap provides direction. It ensures that each stage of research, from topic selection to final submission, is approached systematically. Without a roadmap, the process can become disorganized and difficult to manage. Ethics is fundamental to academic work. This includes avoiding plagiarism, ensuring accuracy in data collection, and presenting findings honestly. Ethical research maintains credibility and trust within the academic community. Personal planning is equally important. Research requires consistent effort over time, and effective planning helps you allocate time to each stage, manage deadlines, and maintain progress. Together, these elements ensure that your research process is structured, credible, and manageable, allowing you to work efficiently and produce reliable outcomes. Academic research is simply a structured way of finding answers using evidence. It is not about collecting random information, but about exploring one clear question in a logical way. Think of it this way: if you notice that students perform differently in exams, instead of guessing why, you ask, what factors affect student performance? That becomes research. Similarly, if you wonder whether social media affects study habits, you can investigate it using data and studies. Research always begins with curiosity, but it becomes academic when you support your ideas with proof. Ask yourself, what am I trying to understand, and how can I prove it? This approach makes research practical, focused, and far less intimidating. Research starts with a simple idea: asking the right question. It doesn't begin with answers, it begins with curiosity. Think about something that confuses you or interests you. That is your starting point. But here's the important part: not every question works for research. A vague question like, "Why do students struggle?" is too broad. Instead, you refine it: what factors affect student performance in exams? Now it becomes clear and researchable. Once you have a good question, the rest becomes easier. Research is actually a simple process: ask a question, find evidence, and arrive at a conclusion. You already do this in daily life. When solving a problem, you gather information and make decisions. Research is the same, just more structured and evidence-based. When you see it this way, research stops being intimidating and starts feeling like a natural extension of your thinking. A fundamental distinction in research is the difference between opinion and academic thinking. In everyday situations, people often rely on opinions, which are based on personal beliefs or experiences. While opinions may be useful, they are not sufficient for academic work. Academic thinking requires evidence. It involves presenting claims that can be supported by data, research, or credible sources. A useful way to understand this distinction is to ask, can this claim be proven? If it cannot, it remains an opinion. If it can be supported with evidence, it becomes an academic argument. This shift from subjective belief to objective reasoning is central to research. It ensures that your work is credible, reliable, and open to evaluation by others. Developing this approach strengthens your analytical skills and forms the basis of effective academic writing. Research often appears complex because it is associated with technical language and formal processes. However, at its core, it begins with something very simple: curiosity combined with structure. The key difference between everyday thinking and academic research lies not in the act of questioning, but in how that question is developed and answered. Consider a common observation. Students who spend more time on social media often seem distracted during study hours. In everyday thinking, this might lead to a quick conclusion such as, social media is harmful. However, research does not stop at assumptions. Instead, it reframes this observation into a structured and testable question, such as, what impact does social media usage have on students' academic performance? This shift, from assumption to inquiry, is what defines academic research. A well-formed research question must be clear, specific, and capable of being answered using evidence. Broad questions create confusion because they lack direction. For instance, asking, why do students struggle academically, is too general. It could relate to teaching methods, mental health, economic factors, or study habits. Refining the question to focus on one aspect, such as time management or digital distractions, makes it researchable and manageable. This process of narrowing down is not a limitation, it is what gives research precision. Once a clear question is established, the next stage is evidence. Evidence is the foundation of all academic work. It is what separates a justified conclusion from a personal opinion. In research, every claim must be supported. This support may come from empirical data, scholarly articles, case law, surveys, or statistical reports, depending on the discipline. However, it is essential to understand that not all information qualifies as evidence. Information becomes evidence only when it directly supports the research question. For example, if the research question concerns academic performance, general articles about social media trends may not be useful unless they specifically address learning outcomes or study behavior. Effective evidence must meet 3 criteria: relevance, accuracy, and credibility. Without these, the argument loses strength. The research process itself can be understood through 3 interconnected layers: question, evidence, and conclusion. The question defines the scope of inquiry and provides direction. Evidence supports analysis and allows for evaluation. The conclusion synthesizes findings and provides a reasoned answer to the original question. These layers must align with each other. A vague question leads to unfocused evidence, and weak evidence leads to unreliable conclusions. Maintaining coherence across these stages is essential for producing meaningful research. Another important distinction in research is between opinion and analysis. An opinion is a statement based on belief or perception, such as, online learning is ineffective. While such statements may reflect personal experiences, they cannot be validated without evidence. A research-oriented approach would reformulate this into a testable question, such as, how does online learning affect student engagement compared to traditional classroom methods? This version allows for comparison, measurement, and evaluation, making it suitable for academic inquiry. Testability is therefore a crucial characteristic of any research question. A testable question provides a clear pathway for investigation. It allows the researcher to identify appropriate methods, collect relevant data, and evaluate findings systematically. If a question cannot be tested, it becomes difficult to answer in a reliable manner, and any conclusions drawn remain speculative. Ensuring that a question is testable strengthens both the process and the outcome of research. It is also important to recognize that research is not about collecting as much information as possible. Instead, it is about selecting the right information. The ability to filter, evaluate, and apply relevant evidence is a critical skill. Excess information without clear relevance can complicate the process rather than improve it. Effective research requires focus, not volume. In practical terms, research is a structured extension of thinking that individuals already use in everyday problem solving. When faced with a decision, people gather information, compare options, and reach a conclusion. Academic research follows the same logic but applies it with greater discipline and reliance on credible sources. This structured approach ensures that conclusions are not only logical but also defensible. Ultimately, research is a process of moving from curiosity to clarity. It begins with a question, progresses through evidence-based analysis, and ends with a justified conclusion. Understanding this structure reduces the perceived complexity of research and allows it to be approached as a systematic and manageable task rather than an abstract or intimidating concept. Research does not end when you find an answer. It actually begins to matter only when you share it. This is where publication becomes important. Think of it like this. If you discover something useful but keep it to yourself, it has very limited impact. But when you present it to others, it becomes part of a larger conversation. That is exactly what academic publication does. It allows your ideas to reach other students, researchers, and experts. When research is published, it is not simply uploaded somewhere. Before that, it goes through a process called peer review. This means that other experts in the same field carefully examine your work. They check whether your arguments make sense, whether your evidence is strong, and whether your work actually adds something new. At first, this might sound intimidating, but it is actually helpful. Feedback from reviewers improves your work and makes it more reliable. In fact, most good research goes through multiple rounds of revision before it is accepted. Now, not all publications are the same. At your level, there are two main types to understand. The first is conference papers. These are shorter, more focused, and often presented at academic events. They are a great starting point because you can receive immediate feedback and improve your work quickly. The second is journal articles. These are more detailed, require deeper analysis, and go through a stricter review process. They are more challenging, but they also carry more academic weight. The key idea is progression. You don't start with the most difficult level. You build your skills step by step. Another concept that becomes important over time is indexing. This simply means where your research is stored and how easily others can find it. Some publications are listed in major academic databases, which increases their visibility and credibility. Imagine writing something valuable but no one being able to find it. That is what happens without proper indexing. While this may not be your immediate concern as a beginner, it helps to understand how research gains recognition globally. At this point, it is also important to set realistic expectations. You are not expected to produce highly complex or groundbreaking research right away. The goal is to learn the process, how to ask clear questions, how to use evidence properly, and how to present your ideas in a structured way. Even a simple topic can become strong research if it is well organized and clearly explained. Originality at this stage does not mean discovering something entirely new. It means developing your own understanding and expressing it logically. To make this more practical, it helps to reflect on 3 things before you begin. First, your motivation. Why are you doing this research? Are you trying to learn a skill, explore an interest, or improve your academic profile? Second, your level. Are you aiming for a basic presentation, a conference, or something more advanced? And third, your audience, who will read or listen to your work. The way you write and present your ideas depends on this. When you start thinking about research in this way, it becomes much more purposeful. You are not just completing an assignment, you are participating in a larger academic system where ideas are created, tested, improved, and shared. So instead of seeing research as a difficult or isolated task, try to see it as a process of contribution. You begin with a question, develop your answer using evidence, refine it through feedback, and finally share it with others. That is how knowledge grows, and that is where your role as a researcher begins. Think of academic publishing like leveling up in a game. You don't start at the hardest stage, you build your way up. First comes school-level conferences, where you can share ideas in a relaxed environment and get feedback. Then undergraduate conferences, where your work reaches a wider audience. Finally, undergraduate journals, the most advanced level, require full papers and strict standards. The goal isn't to jump ahead, but to grow step by step and improve with each stage. Research follows a structured timeline, and understanding this is essential for effective planning. Each stage of research requires time and careful attention. At an initial level, research may take several weeks to complete, allowing you to move through each stage systematically. More advanced research requires additional time due to increased complexity and depth. The key is consistency. Research cannot be completed effectively through last-minute effort. Each stage, from topic selection to writing, must be approached gradually. Planning your time helps ensure that you can focus on each stage without unnecessary pressure. It also allows for revision and improvement, which are essential for producing quality work. Understanding the timeline helps you manage your workload and approach research in a structured and disciplined manner.